Well, this week I hung a poster in my daughter's room. I helped her hang a poster anyway. I'm a little taller. She's 11. Kind of a big deal around my house. I'll just tell you, I do not like posters at all. Not the content. This was a Divergent poster. Don't care about the content. I'm a painting contractor. That's how I make my living. So I really hate all the holes they make in the wall. And by the way, I'll just throw this in for free. This is really not part of the sermon. But for the love of all that is holy, don't use tape, all right? I can explain later. But like, if you think you're helping me by putting tape on posters, oh no, it's 100 times worse. So yes, I hung a poster, a Divergent poster with push pins in my 11-year-old daughter's room. But the reason why I was kind of excited about it was because, even though I hate posters, was because of what it said on it. On the poster, it said this one thing. It said, one choice can transform you. And I thought, that's not a bad thing to put in a kid's room. It really isn't. Like, there are worse. It's like, I remember the Farrah poster I had behind my door, covered up by like a Jesus poster. But like, there are worse things. Like, I was like, one choice can transform you. That's pretty cool. It's pretty helpful, because we don't even think like that, do we? Like, there's a few big choices maybe we deal with, in life. Some of you had kids who went away for college. Some of you just went away for college. Just had someone applauding, like, my kids went away for college, or you just didn't. So a lot of times we'll think about that. We'll think about, like, what college should I be in? Or maybe it's, what major should I choose? Or even sometimes, like, what person should I marry? That's a good thing to think about. Or like, what job should I take? What will my career be? And there's just like a few large sort of choices in life that we think about. But I find that most of the things that make us who we are, most of the things that really decide who we will become, are based on little choices, right? Not big choices. Like the few choices we make, we think about them, but most of the time it's just little choices. Like, will I tell the truth? Or, what will I put in my body? Or like, will I be a brave person? Or will I be weak? Like, with these day-by-day choices we make, we don't even think about it. Who our friends are, what we listen to, what kind of media we are. Just over and over with these tiny little choices. We don't think they matter, but they add up someday. To who we become. And so I think that's why I want to share this movie with you. And maybe you didn't watch it, and I read all the books, so my Kindle thinks I'm a 14-year-old girl again. But like, Hunger Games started that. But I read all the books, and my daughter's read the books, and we've talked about it. And I wanted to share this movie with you because sometimes I think like fantasy and science fiction actually helps us to talk about life, because in this case, in Divergent series, you had one choice. Like, at 16 years old, imagine this, like at 16 years old, you made one choice of who you were going to be for the rest of your life. And they took a test, as you saw in the intro that we just played. You took a sort of a basic skills test, and it sort of placed you and said, this is what you'd be great at. But you still had to choose. Like, you could choose what the test said, you could choose what your family was, or you could choose something completely different, but you only had one choice, and you knew that one choice was going to change you forever. That one choice was going to decide who you would be for the rest of your life, who you would be with for the rest of your life. And so I think it's an interesting thing to talk about, and you can play along, because we're going to talk. I just want to remind you of the different factions, is what they called it. And I think Veronica Roth, the author, was actually pretty brilliant, because she managed to capture, I think, like most of the things that you or I will become in our life. In these factions, there's abnegation. They're sort of the religious people. They're the government people. They're about like self-sacrifice and thinking only of others, as you saw in the clip we just saw. They have like a million rules. They wear gray clothes. They don't look in the mirror. They're sort of the Pharisees, if you will, if you're a Bible person. I realize, and I don't know how you feel, but my parents visited last week, and I go, oh yeah, I was definitely raised abnegation. Absolutely. Like, they were like, if they would have watched this movie, they would have been cheering for that faction, And then there's another faction. There's the erudite. There's the scientists. There's the knowledge people. There's, as she called them, the smart ones. There's the people, and the thing about erudite, they're all about technology. They're all about medicine. They're in charge of all those things. All they do is learn, and they believe. Abnegation believes that if we just sacrifice, if we just follow the rules, then the world would be better. And the erudite, the smart people, the science people, they think, well, if technology will save us, knowledge will save us, we can know enough. And I love what Trish says in that opener. She said, oh, they know everything. The erudite, they know everything. And then there's the candor. I don't know if you can relate to this. I don't know if you would choose this. You can kind of play along like what faction you would be part of. Candor just says everything that's exactly true. They're brutal. I don't know if you grew up at home like that. It's like no tact at all. They just tell like the truth, no matter what, no matter how it hurts. And so they're in charge of whereas abnegation, they're public servants, they're government people, and of course, erudite, they're in charge of science and technology and medicine, and then the candor runs the courts, which I think is kind of a neat system. Can you imagine, like, if lawyers were the best at telling the truth? Like, that's the way it was there. Our system a little different. Like, our lawyer's the best at telling a lie wins. Theirs was the best telling the truth, and so it's an interesting system, to say the least. And then there's Amity. You probably saw them in the clip we just played. Amity, they're the environmentalists. They're the farmers. I'm going to call them hippies. Yes, I'm going to call them hippies. They're all about love and the land, and they're like holding hands and picking crops, and that's their faction. And I like what Trish said. She's like, they're always happy, always happy. And then finally, there's Dauntless. And in case you're wondering, if you haven't seen the movie, I got to spoil it a little bit. Trish chose Dauntless. She chose, even though she was raised abnegation, even though she was raised religious, a Pharisee basically with all the rules, she chose Dauntless. And I like what she said about it. She said, they're amazing. They're awesome. And the thing about Dauntless, their sort of values are, they said this, they said, we believe in freedom from fear, ordinary acts of bravery, and in defending those who cannot defend themselves, which is an awesome mission statement. Here's why I like Dauntless and why Trish liked Dauntless. It's a pretty cool deal. They drink. They eat cake, they wear leather, they have guns. I think they're awesome too. I'm just saying, like, if I had to choose, other than the fact they run everywhere, that just confused me. They should have had at least motorcycles or motor scooters, because they're running everywhere and eating cake and drinking. And I know this combination doesn't work as well if I remember college. But anyway, that's the factions, and there's one more faction. I don't know where you're at. You can kind of pick and play along right where you're at. I would definitely, imagine who would you choose? Which faction, if you had one choice, at 16 years old, you had to choose, I'm going to be this forever. And then there's actually another choice that isn't a choice. There's the factionless. That's the people that the abnegation actually fed because they were sort of on the outskirts of society. They had either failed out of a faction, they didn't pass the test, or they were kicked out for something they did, or some reason they managed to fall through the cracks, and they were just totally isolated and totally sort of angry and outside, and they were just barely cared for and fed, but they were outside of even this faction system. And so I don't know what you would do. I really don't. It's fun to think about, but we don't live like that, do you? Do we? We don't have just one choice. It's the many choices. Maybe it would be better. I don't know. If we had one choice, we'd think about it more, but I don't think so. But here's the thing. Trish chose Dauntless. And here's the thing that happened to her. And I just want you to think about this this is just truth in life. This has nothing to do with Bible. This doesn't even have to do with Divergent. What I think is portrayed pretty well in this film, even though it's a fantasy film, even though it didn't happen, even though it's sort of science fiction, is that once she chose Dauntless, she's like, I'm in that faction, they're awesome, I can't wait, it's going to be perfect. The interesting part of the story that comes next is that all of a sudden she realizes oh wow, there's a test to get in. They didn't know that. They thought, well, you just chose and you're in. No, there was a competition, in fact, and an hour of the movie actually is just the competition. They're just beating the crap out of each other, basically, for the next hour. They're fighting, they're shooting guns, they're throwing knives, they're doing all these things to try to get into Dauntless, otherwise they'll be faction. And I think that's sort of true in life, not that you have to beat on people and throw knives, but I'm just saying isn't it true that the choice is not the choice? You spend all this time thinking ooh, what college should I go to? And then especially you incoming freshmen, you know this, and you're going to hear from your kids if they're in, they think the most important choice is what college, and then you realize, oh my goodness, this is not easy. Like, this is hard. All of a sudden you realize there's like difficulty. Like, it's harder than it looks. And then there's risk because I might not, there's that moment every college freshman feels like, I might not make it. Like, a lot of people don't make it through. And every area of life, every major choice, whether it's marriage or a career, we have this feeling like if I just choose well, that's it. And then you have that moment where you realize, oh my goodness, there's difficulty, there's struggle, there's risk, because I might not make it, and quite frankly, there's competition in every part of life. Where am I gonna fall in the class? Where am I gonna fall in my job? Even, you might go, is there competition in marriage? Absolutely, because you're competing against everything else outside of marriage. It sort of squeezes, like, am I gonna stay married? Am I going to stay in love? Am I going to give myself to this person for the rest of my life? And it's difficult in every area of life. And I just think that's part of growing up. And I actually like in this film, it shows that pretty well. But there's another thing that happens, and it happens to all of us at some point. And maybe this is part of growing up, but I'm not sure everyone experiences this, but most people do. Disillusionment. Because it's interesting as you follow this story of this girl who is raised in abnegation. She's raised in sort of this strict religious, if you will, this very strict rules-filled environment, and then she goes to become dauntless, and she's like, oh, this is going to be awesome. And she thinks the reason why is they're so free, they're so brave, and you sort of follow the path, the trajectory of her life. And even though she meets, because, let's just face it, this is a kind of a teen romance, so she, of course, meets her boyfriend/instructor, who is named Four. So he's awesome. He has a one-syllable name. He's got tattoos. He's kind of brooding, and it's everything you're scared your daughter will meet. But that's another story. But like, she meets Four, and then here's what she realizes. She realizes that the people in Dauntless that she thought were so free, the people in Dauntless she thought were so brave, they're afraid, and they're sort of not that free. And that's not it. Like, in every area of life, she realizes that the people in abnegation, the people she grew up with, they're not always selfless and they're not always good. And it's funny that in the opening sequence, she says, and there's erudite, they know everything. And there's this point where she realizes, like, not only do they not know everything, they don't always use it for the good of society as they claim. Like, they're not exactly what they, and in every area, and even Candor, she finds out, like, they don't always speak the truth for justice. Sometimes they just speak the truth for harshness. And she finds out in the end, and I don't want to spoil this for you, but like, I don't even know if this is in the movie, but in the book, Amity, they're always happy, but they are always high. I mean, they are so high. That's just the truth. Like, so in every area of life, like, sorry for the spoiler, but like, in every area of life, this girl finds out, and I think we find out, and so many of us find out, like, you go into this choice you make, and then you find out the choice is not the choice. There's actually difficulty and risk, and then at some point you go, oh my goodness, this isn't even what I thought it was going to be. And that's a difficult point in life. And I don't know if it's growing up, but there's just this point in life that you have to sort of, and it sort of goes two ways, doesn't it? Like, when you become disillusioned, you go, maybe it's not all what it seems like. Maybe this thing I thought would like make my life complete isn't, whether it's marriage or career or children or education, like any of those things. You go, this is it. And when I reach that, and then you become sort of disillusioned because you go, maybe it's not. And you can become cynical. You can become factionless. You can sort of drop out. Or you can kind of push through. And it's interesting to think about that, because I think we all deal with that. Now, here's the thing that I really want to talk to you about, though. Because we can all relate to that. We've all had those feelings, or if you haven't, just trust me, you will. Like, you think the choice is not. Everything is harder than it looks. And there's a point in life that everything that you strive for, you will have that moment of disillusionment where you're like, oh, I'm not sure. But here's the thing, like, it was all sort of, this story is all about choice, like choosing the right thing, choosing the right faction, choosing to be the right kind of person. But there's one part of this story, and it's in the title, so I'm not giving away. This whole idea of being divergent is pretty interesting. Because it's the one thing, that Tris didn't choose. Like, she never chose to be Divergent, and if you're wondering what Divergent is, you might be wondering even if you read the book and watched the movie, because it's not very clear, honestly. Like, for most of the movie and most of the book, you're like, that's in the name, shouldn't you explain it? And you feel dumb, like, why don't I know what Divergent is? And there's, and it's like so funny because there's like this whole deal about, oh, I hope you're not Divergent, and they're like hunting Divergents and killing Divergents, and you're like, I'm not sure what it is. And Triss is all worried, like, I hope I'm not Divergent. And here's what it sort of boils down to. Like, she realizes as she's being tested, like, that she's not sort of locked into any one faction. She doesn't quite fit into any faction. Like, she could be any of the factions, and she doesn't see reality. I mean, she sees reality in a different way than a lot of people. Like, they have these testing moments, and it's really gross because they're always like, I don't know, for some reason they love like sticking needles inside of their neck, which kind of makes me go, ugh. But anyway, that's what they do again and again. So they have these tests where it's virtual reality. Hopefully, freshman English doesn't turn into that, because that needle looks like it would really hurt. But like, the way they train is they go into these virtual reality, because this is fiction, this is science fiction, this is fantasy. And for some reason, like, Triss doesn't stay locked into that virtual reality. Like, she can see reality, she can think outside of that. Like, she actually knows what is instead of what's being projected into her mind. It's sort of weird, but it's still confusing. Like, I don't think that's a reason to kill someone, like, call me liberal, but I'm thinking, like, you don't have to kill them. They're just a little different, like, they don't see reality exactly like everyone else, and they don't exactly, fit in, but they're good citizens. It's not like she's factionless and just giving up. Like, it's just weird because throughout this movie, you're like, why are they so afraid of Divergent? It doesn't seem like that big a deal. Why are they hunting them? Why are they killing them? Why do they hate them? Why is she so afraid that someone will find out? She's so worried that she would be Divergent. And see, it reminds me of this thing that Jesus said. And I want to read you this, and it's from something that Jesus said. Imagine this, like, Jesus said this as he was being tried right before his crucifixion. And Pilate, the king, the governor of the area, is like going, answer me. People say you're a king, which obviously he didn't want him to be the king because he was already the king. He's like, answer me. Are you the king of the Jews? And Jesus answered. He said this, and it's really weird. He said, my kingdom is not an earthly kingdom. If it were, my followers would fight to keep me from being handed over to the Jewish leaders. And then he said these words, which are really weird. This sounds science fiction. This sounds fantasy. He said, my kingdom is not of this world. He's like, my kingdom is not of this world. Now here's the interesting thing, a little behind the scenes trivia, if you will. He said, if my kingdom were of this world, my followers would fight, and they're not fighting. There was one follower that did fight. If you read scripture, you might have heard this story. Only one guy fought. One guy did not get that memo. One guy did not understand that he wasn't supposed to fight. A guy named Peter. All the soldiers come to get Jesus. The mob comes. Judas comes. Peter whips out a sword, and like, I don't know, he's pretty bad with a sword because he cuts off a guy's ear. Jesus puts it back on and is like, stop that, put that away. Peter totally loses it. Peter walks away. In fact, we know right now when Jesus is saying these words, Peter is hiding sort of outside. He's in the courtyard, and everybody's asking him, aren't you one of the guys who was with Jesus? He's lying about it. He's denying he even knows Jesus. He like cusses at a middle school girl when she asks him. It's like a mess. But later, here's the thing I want to talk to you about this morning. And it's just such a weird thing, but I think Divergent, this movie, helps us understand. Because later, this guy Peter who was so disillusioned, this guy Peter who was so like sort of didn't understand what Jesus was trying to do, he stands up in the very first church service and he preaches a sermon and 3,000 people get baptized and the whole church starts in one day. And later, he's just trying to explain. He's trying to write, like, what is it? What did Jesus mean? He's writing to other followers of Jesus, like, what did Jesus mean about this whole thing of his kingdom not being of this world? Because it's weird to explain, isn't it? Like, I'm a Christian. Well, what's that? Does that mean you go to church? Well, not necessarily. Does it mean you're this? No, not, And you've probably had that discussion, or you've had discussions with others. And here's some words that Peter used as he was trying to describe this concept of being of a kingdom that's not of this world. He called us temporary residents and foreigners, Strangers and aliens. So if you wondered, are aliens in the Bible? Oh, yes, they are. That'd be an awesome sermon series. I'm just saying, if I were a smart guy. And there's sojourners and exiles. He said we're like foreigners. Now, these were words that through the years, people have used, and these weren't his words because it was in Aramaic or Hebrew, but words that we've tried to explain what Peter was saying, translate what Peter was saying. Residents, temporary residents, foreigners, aliens, sojourners. All these words were just trying to explain what we were if we're followers of Christ, if we're part of that kingdom that is not of this world, which is so sort of science fiction sounding, sounds weird, sounds like Divergent. It's just weird. In fact, I think that's an excellent word. I was thinking, if I could add a word to that list, not to add to Bible, but just to try to describe what Peter was saying. As I watched this film, as I read these books the first time, I was like, I think I would add this word, divergent, which just means tending to develop or be different, varying, different, dissimilar, unlike, desperate. Because here's why. In this film, if you watch this film or if you read the books, it's kind of interesting because divergence happen in all the different factions, mostly out of abnegation, which is kind of, I think there's another sermon series based on they come out of religion and they don't stay there. It's kind of an interesting phenomenon. I think Veronica Roth was pretty smart in writing it that way. But it doesn't mean divergence are only in one faction. They're in all areas of life. And it doesn't mean they're not part of the earth. They don't all become factionless and just kind of drop out and go, oh, I don't want to be part of your system. No, they're there. But they're hunted and they're hated and they're distrusted because they're just different. And ever since Jesus said these words to Pilate, ever since Jesus said this before he was crucified, the same has happened with Christians, with his followers, with followers of Jesus, all over the world throughout time. Even as Peter started this thing that became the church, the followers were hated and distrusted, and many of them were killed. And even today in our world, in Iraq and in different parts of the world, Christians are being hunted and hated and killed. And you go, why? It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. What's so bad? What's so different about being a Christian? It's just so we don't fit into any faction perfectly because we see reality a little different. What is it about Christians that are so dangerous? When you watch this film, what is it about divergence that everyone hates so much? They're not that different. It's not that big a deal. I feel like that sometimes. You ever feel like a stranger, an alien? And not that I don't want to be part of this world or don't want to be part of society. I just go, I don't get the factions. We're going to do a series coming up in a couple of weeks about anger and outrage. And I can't wait because it just seems like everyone's so angry and everyone wants to choose factions and you got to be for this or for that. I gotta be for, are you for the police? Are you for protesters? No. Am I for Tony Stewart or for Kevin Ward? No. It's just all these factions and you go, I'm not for that. No, that doesn't, I think there's another way. And you just feel weird and you feel like I don't fit in. I want to tell you why in the words of Peter. And I want to show you something first. And it's pretty important because there's a point in the movie, and I want you to watch this closely. One night, Triss wakes up and she finds out exactly what it is to be a divergent. She finds out exactly why they are hunted, hated, and killed. And this moment, I just want to share it with you because it changes everything. The reason why divergents were hated, the reason why they were hunted, the reason why they were killed and considered dangerous is because they were awake. They were the only ones that were truly awake. They were the only ones that couldn't be controlled. They were the only ones who sort of saw through the system. And I played you this clip at the first and kind of the voiceover that Triss said. She said, we're lucky to be in the city. They say the war was terrible and the rest of the world was destroyed and our founders built this wall to keep us safe. And they divided it into 5 groups, factions, to keep the peace. And I promise not to ruin this whole series and this whole series of books, but if you've read them, you will agree with me, right? Back me up. Those are all lies. Everything she believed, everything that they believed, everything that was taught, everything that was in their media, everything in their schools, everything was a lie. And I've read the book, and I know. And so here's what Peter said. Because see, I've read the book. Most of you have. Some of you have also. In this world we live in, most of the things that everybody knows, everybody believes, they all teach, and it's in school, and it's in the media, so many things of them are lies. And Peter said these words, and I think they are brilliant. He said these words, he said, you're not like that. You're a chosen people. He's talking to followers of Jesus. You're a royal priest, a holy nation, God's very own possession. And as a result, you can show others the goodness of God, for he has called you out of darkness. He's woke you up. You are awake into his wonderful life. Once you had no identity as a people, now you are God's people. Once you received no mercy, now you have received God's mercy. Dear friends, listen to this. I warn you, as temporary residents and foreigners, as aliens and strangers, to keep away from the worldly desires that wage war against your very souls. Be careful to live properly among your unbelieving neighbors. Then even if they accuse you for doing wrong, they will see your honorable behavior and they will give honor to the God who judges this world. And I want the band to come back up here again, but I want to just tell you this, and I want to ask you this. Even though the Divergents in this series were hated and hunted and distrusted, the fact that they were awake was the hope of their world. I will say that much. And if you're a follower of Jesus this morning, the fact that you're awake, the fact that you see things differently, the fact that you just can't quite buy into any faction, whether it's religion or government or science, you're like, oh, I don't know. Like none of those seem to answer all the questions. That's okay, because you are the hope of this world through Christ. So one choice can transform you. That part's true. It's just not the choice you think. So you and I, we think it's a choice about where we'll do, what we'll go, who we'll marry. All those things are good choices. Think well, think hard. But the real choice, the choice that changes everything, is the choice that Tris had. Like, what do you do when you're awake? Like one night she woke up and she realized she was doing, everyone around her is doing something terrible. Like they're going out and she's like, I got to rescue my family. I have to rescue the people that are in, I have to rescue someone. I know the difference between right and wrong. I am awake. And that's your choice this morning. So I just want to ask you these questions. And maybe you're here this morning and you go, that is weird. That's science fiction. I get that. And maybe this doesn't resonate with you at all, and maybe, I haven't done a good job. I don't know, but I just know this, like if you are awake, you have a choice. You can go along, you can do everything everyone else does, but what Peter said instead is he said, you are chosen. You didn't choose this, you were chosen, but now you have a choice. Because even if you're hated, even if you're distrusted, even if people think it's weird to be a Christian, your job is to rescue them in the power of Christ. Your job is to live in such a way that even if they don't like you, even if they think you're weird, even if they think you are divergent, which means different, they will give honor to God because of your life. And I just want to pray with you this morning, dear Jesus. God, for all of those who are awake today, God, I pray that you would help them with that choice. What do they do next? What is it? And for all of them who are on that path, God, give them strength. And God, for any sleepers here today, God, help to know that we just love them and we're just so glad they're here. And God, help us to serve them, even if they just kind of think, hey, that's strange, that's awesome. But God, for all of us who've been called by you, who are a chosen people, who know that we know that it's just not the way everyone thinks it is. And we believe your word, and we believe your truths. God, I pray that we would choose very wisely. God, give us strength to make that correct choice. In your name we pray. Amen.
Well, thanks so much to the J players for playing music for us today. So I brought up a couple friends with me, and we're going to talk to you about action groups. So in the fall, we're kind of restarting our action groups, and we have some new stuff to announce. So Marian, go ahead and tell us about them.
Yeah, action groups are small groups of action churchers and other friends that you invite that meet outside of Sunday morning to do life together. They're your friends, they're your accountability partners, they're just great inspiration. So think about where you'd like to be this fall, because we have 6 really awesome action groups for you to join. So 3 of them I'm going to tell you about today, and then I'll tell you about the next 3 next week. And all of the action groups are actually on the action group table, so you can stop by and sign up there. So the first one I want to tell you guys about, I'm super excited. Men of Action is back. So all the ladies rejoice. First and third Saturday mornings, men will be meeting at 8 a.m. Johnny will be leading the group again. So make sure to sign up and learn more about that. We also have a Business Chat 101 for those of you interested in business, networking, entrepreneurial stuff. This is basically the Action Church version of the Chamber of Commerce. So go check that out if you are interested in being in a group like that. They are going to be on the third Thursdays of every month at 6:30 p.m. And then we have student ministry, and this is for middle and high school students. It's led by Josiah and Rachel Katz, and they hang out, play some games, and study the Bible. So they'll be doing Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m.
It's a great opportunity, kids. If you want to get away from your parents, come hang out at my house. And
Date night.
It's even better than that. Parents, if you want to get rid of your kids, send them to my house. It's great. It's good for everybody. So I'd love to have you guys. We have a lot of fun. I know I'm not supposed to pitch my own group.
But he does every time.
I am really having problems with Keynote right now. I am sorry, everybody.
I love that picture of Rachel. So action groups, if you want more information, you can go out there. We have an action groups table with all of the other ones, and I'll tell you about the next 3 next week. Until then, I think Tiff has some things to say about Bridge of Hope.
Yes, hi, good morning. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, please. Yes, I am so sorry, everybody. Oh, that is so distracting. Oh, thank you. All right, go ahead. Take it away, Bridge of Hope.
Yes.
Wow.
I know Steve's been up here talking with you about Bridge of Hope, and I just wanted to give you an update. We were able to move the mom in yesterday, and I want to thank a few of you guys that were able to show up, come out in the rain, and move her in and get her all settled. Thank you so much. What a blessing that is to be able to do that with you guys. Another vital need that we have is a few more mentors for the mom. We have had a handful of people step up that are willing to do that, and we need a few more. So basically what that means is you could be a good friend to her, maybe give her a call once a week, maybe have some coffee with her here and there. You know, maybe you've been a single mom and you know what it's like, or maybe you can fix the car, or maybe you're a handyman and you would like to help her out with that. There's so many different ways that she could use your help. And most of all, we just want to love her and care for her Action Church style. So if you are willing to do that, or would like to pray about that, or talk with us more about that, Steve and I will be out at the table, and we would just love to talk to you.
Awesome. So right now, I would have an awesome slide that would be up there. You can imagine it, that has a little card and say, if you're interested in talking to anybody, you can fill out a card, and it's a nice blue screen right now. Or pictures of my wife in her wedding dress. That was beautiful. So if you have any questions or comments, you can fill out a card. If you want more photos of my wife in her wedding dress, or more photos of my baby, let me know. And if you're
Always.
interested in action groups, we have cards out there. You can fill out an action group card. So if this is your first time in Action Church, we actually have a gift. Again, a nice slide up there to show you first-time guests. If you we'd like to give it to you and thank you for coming. And just thank you for being a part of Action Church. I think this goes without saying, but none of us are professionals. This is all volunteer, and so thank you for just inviting your friends, investing your money, and getting involved. You guys, everybody makes this happen every week, and you guys are part of that, and it's really awesome. So I'll pray for us, and we'll get on out of here. Dear Heavenly Father, just thank you for this message of us not really fitting into our culture of this world. And I pray for those of us who are part of that separate kingdom that Jesus was talking about, that we just can love Jesus and love God, and just tell our neighbors about this special thing that God really just loves His children. And I pray that we can tell our neighbors that, and show our neighbors, not just with preaching to them or using our words, but actually using our actions and showing that we love them. Thank you for this place of Action Church. Thanks for all these people who make it happen every week. In your name, amen. See you guys next week.